Hello everyone, Professor Bannock here once again to talk to you about Aristotle, in particular his work, the Nicomachean Ethics, an ancient masterwork in the field of ethics. Let's start by imagining that we're walking into our very first day of Introduction to Ethics class, and the teacher up front gives you a moral dilemma. Do you take action A or do you take action B? Which one is the correct action? Let's work it through. Let's do some theorizing about it. One thing you could conclude for sure here is that Aristotle is not your professor. Aristotle does not think that it's worthwhile to sit and contemplate ethical or moral dilemmas in the abstract, since what counts is how you respond to context. In that sense, Aristotle is presenting to us a version of virtue ethics. That is, ethics should focus on becoming the right kind of person, and then trusting that the character that you develop through ethical activity will respond correctly when the time comes. So sitting around and trying to calculate the correct action A or B is really a hopeless activity. Ethics isn't about providing a set of rules. It's rather about becoming the kind of person that you want to be. It's not about having a moral code, but about being able to effectively be that kind of a person. In that sense, Aristotle's virtue ethics is concerned with the attainment of this Greek word, Eudaimonia. What it means is flourishing or well-being, sometimes translated as happiness. Although for us in English, happiness doesn't quite cut it. Happiness is too broad, whereas Eudaimonia is talking about a specific state of flourishing. And for Aristotle in particular, the shape of a life that achieves Eudaimonia is not subjective. That is to say, there's something intrinsic to human nature that dictates what kind of life is best for us. It's not just that our subjective preferences have been fulfilled. We could live a life on Aristotle's conception in which all of our subjective preferences have been fulfilled, yet for the desires that we're fulfilling have ultimately been empty, or ultimately don't give rise to the kind of life form that makes human life worth living. We can imagine someone who's never deeply contemplated what's most worthwhile in life, who only wants to eat candy. That's their only desire, and they eat candy all day and live a rather unsatisfying life in any other regard. Well, in this thought experiment, we have a person whose subjective desires have been fulfilled, but they didn't really order their preferences correctly according to the nature of what they are as a human being. So that means a central task for ethics on Aristotle's consideration is not really which actions are correct or which types of actions are correct, but what is the human being and what would it to be a flourishing human being. So let's work backwards a little bit. We're looking for the formation of life that is most expressive of what the human being is. We're going to talk about what the human being is, but first let's look at the form of life that we're all after. Aristotle puts 4 constraints on what eudaimonia must satisfy. First, eudaimonia must be pursued for its own sake. The happy life, the flourishing life, isn't something that we pursue so that we can get other things. Rather, it is the thing for the sake of which we pursue all the other stuff. In this way, Aristotle believed that with everything we do, there's a structure of means and ends. And each end can become a means to some other end. So, for example, I drink coffee in the morning as a means to the end of obtaining energy, but then that end of obtaining energy is itself a means towards doing better work, and the end of doing better work is a means towards some other end, and so on and so forth. But all of that is going to have to bottom out in something that's pursued for its own sake, for no other reason than that we want that. Secondly, the eudaimonia must also be involved in our other means and ends. We don't only want it for its own sake, we want other things for its sake. So we want the nice house for the sake of a happy life, and so on and so forth. Together, those two features amount to the feature of completeness. That is, eudaimonia is complete. It is the end that we choose for itself, and that we choose everything else for the sake of. And that leads to the final marker of eudaimonia, that it's self-sufficient, in the sense that if we had eudaimonia, our life would feel like we were lacking in nothing. That rules out the idea that eudaimonia is simply a pleasant life, for example. Because if we have a pleasant life, we could add to that by adding even more pleasantries. But eudaimonia is self-sufficient. If we had it, our life would be lacking in nothing. Sure, we could have even more pleasant foods, we could have even more pleasant houses or places to live. But if we're in eudaimonia, all of those things would be icing on the cake. They wouldn't indicate a lack in our well-being. Now that we've gotten a grasp on some of the marks of eudaimonia, we need to talk about what the human person is so that we can see how the human person could form a life that has all of those features. To do that, we need to take a look at Aristotle's faculty psychology. That is, what are the parts of the human mind and how do they work together? The first part of the human soul is the metabolic or nutritive part. That is the part that takes in nutrients and produces energy. Now, this part is not unique to human beings. We share that with the plants. So this, while it's going to be important, isn't going to give us the full story. The next part is perception and locomotion. This is the part of ourselves that enables us to perceive a pen and move to grab the pen and use the pen towards our aim. This is something we also share with the animals, so it's not going to be the whole story either. Finally, we have the highest faculty of the human being, the thing that's unique to the human, the intellect or our rationality. Another way to think about this is that the perception and locomotion part of ourselves is what pertains to action, doing things, whereas the intellect or the rationality part is what pertains to thought, thinking about things. Now, the unique ability of the human being is to be able to use thought to produce better actions. So Aristotle believes that the human good consists in acting in accordance with reason. From this, we can derive the Aristotelian picture of our being in the world and the elements of our comporting ourselves towards reality. The way that we comport ourselves toward reality is, first of all, that we aim at what is good, or at least what we perceive to be good. We may be mistaken about that. That's going to come in later. We aim and then we exert energy towards obtaining the aim. We're always being at work, exerting energy. If we've stopped exerting energy towards our aims, then we've really stopped living. Even if we've achieved a lot, we got to keep going. So this is never going to stop. In that process, we affectively respond to the results of our aiming and our exertion of energy. We get what we want, we feel good. We fail to get what we want, we feel bad. If the results of our actions end up being other than we thought, we start to feel negatively about ourselves, and so on. So we're aiming, exerting energy, and then affectively responding. We feel something about the results of our efforts. Consolidating all that, we reason about where to aim. If we thought we were aiming at something good and it turns out that that actually messed us up, well, then we think that through. We figure out how to reorient our aiming. And if we are aimed at the right things, but we're not effectively getting them, we need to reason about how we're going to better exert energy towards obtaining those ends. So we're aiming at things, we're exerting energy, and we're trying to use reason to ensure that our exertion of energy is not futile. In this, the human being is essentially exerting energy to harmonize the temporal spread of its life, the past, the present, and the future. In order to be virtuous, beautiful, ethical agents, we must have a good temporal grasp on our lives. And that's what Aristotle is putting forward to you, the notion of habit as a way to obtain an understanding of time. Notice that in aiming towards something and exerting energy to do it, we're aiming towards the future. We're thinking about what state we're going to be in the future and what state we want to be in the future and how we're going to get from A to B, from now till then. In affectively responding, feeling a certain way to the things that are present for us, we are hooked into the present. So we aim towards something in the future. That either comes or it doesn't come, and in the present moment we feel good or we feel bad. In reasoning about what to do, we're incorporating our past experience. Indeed, in holding ourselves and grasping ourselves as these beings dispersed in time, we are unique among the forms of life. Sure, animals aim at the future. They want to secure the food now because they know it's not coming in the winter and so on. But they really do that through instinct. They don't reason and incorporate past experience to the extent that we do to change who we are. In this way, our being is becoming. It's unfolded over all of the temporal modes. We are being at work, always exerting energy and always incorporating past experience to exert energy in an improved fashion. The Aristotelian wisdom is that the person who best synthesizes the temporal modes of their existence is the one who realizes him or herself in the form of a beautiful life. To be a virtuous person, therefore, requires having a clear hold on one's temporal dispersion through time. We can't be concerned solely with what feels good to me right now. I need to be concerned with what's going to feel good to me in the future. Another way to put the point would be to say we need to become the type of person whose present embraces both past and the future. That's going to require a strategy in which things that have happened to me in the past actually inform the way I move into the future. So what I want in the future, what I'm aiming towards, needs to inform my present, but my past also needs to inform my present. How? My approach into the future needs to be informed by proper rational deliberation about what things are worth aiming at. I could spend all my life efficiently carrying out means to ends, but if the ends are never reflected on, and I never really get which ends are worth spending time on downright, then I'm going to be really efficient at getting a whole lot of nothing in the end. To understand which aims are correct, I need to know what's happened to me in the past and how I can use the past to inform my present. If I'm spending all my time doing what feels good to me now, I know that's going to inhibit my ability in the future to get what I want. But now imagine if every time I had to discipline myself and pull up all my motivation and all my self-discipline to get me to do what's going to be good for me in the future, to do what the results of deliberation say, then I'm going to run out of steam at some point. One way to incorporate our past mistakes, our past trial and error into a better future is through deliberation. I sit down to deliberate on what I want to do tomorrow, and I think, what happened to me in the past when I procrastinated? Well, that didn't turn out so well for me, so I'm going to incorporate my past experience through deliberation and make sure that my present self works towards my future by not procrastinating. But there's another way to incorporate our past into our present in such a way that it starts to become effortless. And that's what really interests Aristotle. Consider the case of someone who acts virtuously even though they don't want to, or who's only done a virtuous thing this one time. That person isn't the fully virtuous person. The fully virtuous person is someone who acts to do something from a stable character trait, because that's just what they do. And given that circumstance, that action is just going to follow from their character. So the better way to incorporate my past into my present and future is through the notion of habit. If I habituate myself to going about things in the correct way, then I won't have to exert willpower and all the discipline I have. It'll just simply be the way I am, what I do. That's the ingredients for a beautiful life. That's what lays the foundation for the life worth living, is a life full of habits that synthesize the past, present, and future in a harmonious way, in such a way that I've become something who's gained the wisdom of my past failures and used those past failures as a way to become the kind of thing that I know I want to be through reflecting on what's good.